Good morning. I am Anita Willets Burnham, and this is my house. Now, I didn't see it with quite this view out the windows because, of course, I wasn't here when the house was picked up and moved. It's rather an interesting story. I actually come to you today via a time machine. Now, you think time machines don't exist, but they do. And guess where they were invented? Winnetka, Illinois. A man in Winnetka invented a time machine. And I was out and about one day with my paint box, and he said, Mrs. Burnham, my wife's just had new baby twins, and I would like their portrait painted. And I said, well, certainly, absolutely. Here is my fee. He says, no. I'm going to give you a ride in my time machine in exchange for you painting the portrait of my children. Well, I am always one for trading my work for goods and services. So I said, absolutely. I painted a lovely portrait, and then I said, where are we going? And he said, well, do you want to go to the past or do you want to go to the future? And I said, well, I've been around the world twice. And when you go to foreign countries, you kind of feel like you've been to the past. So I sort of figured I'd already done that, so I wanted to go to the future. And he said, well, Mrs. Burnham, where do you want to go? And I said, I want to see my house. Because, you see, my house is unique in all the state of Illinois, perhaps the entire country. It is a real log house built in the 1820s or the 1830s. And I discovered it while I was out painting. I was painting an apple orchard, and there was this little hut. Well, it's bigger than a hut, but that's a good name for it. And it had clapboards on it, and I had my children, 3 of my children. We didn't have baby Ann yet. I had 3 of my children in a baby buggy, and I parked the buggy and set up my paint box and was painting this lovely apple orchard and having a grand time. And I ran out of water, and I needed some water, so I went and knocked on the door thinking this has to be abandoned. Well, a lady was living there, believe it or not. And so as I was standing outside and she was getting me some water for my paint box, I saw some silver boards underneath the clapboards. And I very naughtily peeled some off, and I revealed wide, hand-hewn logs underneath the clapboards. I realized that this entire 2-story house was built of logs, hand-hewn by some workmen 100 years ago. To possess it possessed me. I had to own this house. It took a long time to find out who actually owned it, but lucky for me, the Indian Hill Country Club wanted to build a golf course right on the spot where the house was sitting. So for $25, which I had won as a painting prize for one of my lovely paintings, see how I trade things for things? I gave Mr. Joy $25 and he gave me to the deed of the house and said, now Mrs. Burnham, where are you going to put it? I hadn't thought of that. Well, husbands are a wonderful thing when they do what you want them to do. So that night I made an especially nice dinner for Dad. And I said, Dad, do you suppose, instead of living in an apartment, we could take my log hut and we could move it onto some nice piece of land right here in Winnetka and set up housekeeping? And I think he choked. I wasn't sure if it was my bad cooking or the proposition. But in the end, he said, yes, Anita, you may move your house. And so we moved it to 1407 Tower Road and set up housekeeping there. Of course it had dirt floors. It was a log house. But when we moved it, we put down cement floors. And people said, Mrs. Burnham, we have linoleum and we have tile and we have all these lovely things. Why did you put down cement floors? Well, so the children could roller skate, of course. So when the man with the time machine said, Mrs. Burnham, where do you want to go? I said, I want to see my house. So he set all the dials, and do you know he asked me how much I weighed? Well, I lied, just by a little. And I was really kind of afraid I was going to show up missing one leg or part of an arm. I didn't dare bring a paint box with me. I wanted to. I came just me. Of course, you have to have a cape. It covers a multitude of sins, don't you know? So he dropped me off, doors open, 1407 Tower Road, my house isn't there. I was crushed. I thought, oh no, it's been torn down. So I walked a little farther and I recognized some of the other houses and I recognized some of the trees in the parks. And I said, I found some children. They were walking a dog. And I said, hello, I am Mrs. Burnham and I used to live in a log house that was right there. So I said, oh, it's in Crow Island Woods. We'll take you there. So they walked me over here, and as we came down the street and turned the corner, I almost cried. There it was, my house, beautifully cared for, perfectly preserved. The Winnetka Historical Society is taking care of it. I'm so proud. So I came in, and there were people here visiting, and I got to talk to them. And I got to tell them about the house, and they said, Mrs. Burnham, how did you move the house? And I said, does anybody have a copy of my book around here? And they did. Here it is. And right here, this is how we moved the house. And I bet you know who that person in the big black cape is. That's me. And when we got the house all moved and the family moved into it, we had a lovely time until we got restless. And then we decided to go around the world. So we did that twice. And I wrote a book about it. And if you want to hear more about that, you're going to have to come see me speak.